Welcome to our TechSphere Podcast. And today we're going to do a deep dive into all things AI. Well, actually, more specifically, all things Eric Schmidt and his thoughts on AI. So Eric Schmidt is, I'm sure you know, former CEO of Google, so he knows what he's talking about. And he has some pretty fascinating and maybe even kind of scary insights into where this technology is headed. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with your friends if you find it valuable. Now, to help us unpack it all, we have our expert guide here with us. So what makes Schmidt's take on AI stand out?
You know, one thing that really jumps out is that Schmidt sees AI as like a matter of human survival. He's not just talking about efficiency or cool new gadgets. It's about like, can we control something that might actually become smarter than us?
Okay, that's a pretty big statement. He actually says that, AI is developing so fast, it could actually surpass human capabilities. I mean, like a lot of areas. So then what?
Right. And to illustrate this point, he gives this example. Imagine a self-driving car, right? And it gets into an emergency situation. Now, the AI might have to choose between protecting a passenger or maybe like preventing a bigger accident. So putting the needs of the many over the needs of the few, classic ethical dilemma.
That's a lot to process.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if we are even ready for AI to be making those kinds of decisions.
Yeah.
He also talks about raw models. What are those exactly?
So think of them as like the wild west of AI. They're trained on massive amounts of data, but they haven't really been filtered for safety or ethics. So incredibly powerful, but also, potentially dangerous.
And he says these raw models are already capable of something called day zero attacks.
Mm-hmm.
What does that even mean?
So it basically means they could find and exploit vulnerabilities in systems that haven't even been invented yet. It's like having a hacker who can predict the future of technology and use it against us.
That's a little unsettling, to say the least. It sounds like AI is a bit of a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. Huge potential, but maybe some serious downsides too.
Absolutely, and that's really Schmidt's point. We need to be having these conversations now before these systems are so deeply embedded in our lives, before it's too late to course correct.
So it's not like some Hollywood scenario, robots becoming self-aware. It's more about being prepared for all the unintended consequences of something that we don't fully understand yet.
Exactly. And one area where people are already seeing this play out is in jobs. Like what happens when AI can do our jobs better than us? Faster, cheaper.
Right. Everyone is worried about robots taking their jobs.
Yeah.
What's Schmidt's view on that?
Well, actually, he thinks that AI will create more jobs than it gets rid of. He sees it more as a tool to make us more productive, leading to new industries and things we can't even imagine yet.
Okay, that's a bit more optimistic than what you usually hear. How does that work?
He gives the example of robots in Asian manufacturing. Countries like Japan, their populations are aging, labor costs are going up. They already rely heavily on robots to do jobs that, well, humans just can't or won't do. It's not about replacing workers, it's about filling a gap.
So maybe the question isn't if we'll have jobs, but if we'll have the right skills for the jobs of the future. It's like every other big technological shift, the jobs change, but we still need human ingenuity.
Right. Adapting and learning new things is going to be even more important now. And not just technical skills, it's things like critical thinking and creativity, the stuff AI can't do.
That's interesting because Schmidt also talks about the early days at Google.
Yeah.
Sounds like the classic Silicon Valley story, building computers in dorm rooms, even a story about a corkboard catching fire.
Oh, yeah. He really emphasizes finding those super talented people and working together with them. That collaboration seems like it was key to their success.
But he also mentions how even Google, with all their resources, missed out on some things, like YouTube. They were developing their own video platform, but underestimated YouTube's, like agility and how innovative they were.
Right. It's a good reminder that even the biggest companies can be outmaneuvered. You got to stay nimble and open to new ideas.
That's a good lesson for anyone, really, not just tech companies. But going back to AI and the maybe darker side of it, Schmidt says we might actually need to pull the plug on AI sometimes. How realistic is that? Can you just unplug something as potentially smarter than you?
Well, he actually gives some specific situations where that might be necessary. Like if an AI is getting smarter in ways we don't understand, or if it starts developing its own language that we can't decipher, those are like major red flags.
So it's not about robots taking over the world. It's about recognizing when an AI is maybe exceeding our control. Setting boundaries, right?
Exactly. Being proactive, not reactive. We need to think about these risks now and put safeguards in place before things, get out of hand.
It's all very relevant to what's happening right now. I mean, AI is everywhere in the news. It's exciting, but also makes you think, like, where are we headed?
It's definitely powerful, and it could reshape the world in huge ways. But it's up to us to make sure it's used for good.
And that's a good place to maybe take a break. We've covered a lot, from the potential benefits of AI to, well, the very real risks that we need to address. But we're just getting started, so join us in part 2, where we'll continue exploring what Eric Schmidt has to say about AI and what it means for the future of, well, all of us.
Picking up where we left off, one of the things that really got me thinking in Schmidt's book is how he explores what it means to be human, in a world that's increasingly dominated by AI.
Yeah, he's not afraid to tackle those big questions, is he? It's easy to focus on the day-to-day stuff, jobs, technology, safety. But Schmidt really goes deeper, what does all this mean for us as humans?
Exactly. He talks about kids growing up with AI companions that are more like friends than just tools. Imagine that. Having a friend who's got, superhuman knowledge, knows you better than anyone, but isn't even human.
That's wild. It would totally change what it means to grow up, right?
Yeah.
How would those relationships shape a child? Their social skills, their whole understanding of the world.
And it's not just kids. Schmidt also looks at the impact on adults, like our sense of identity, our purpose. If machines can do our jobs, write our stories, even make our music, what's left for us? What makes us human?
It's almost like an existential crisis, right?
Yeah.
He makes us face some pretty uncomfortable questions about what makes life meaningful.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just finding new jobs or learning new skills. It's about figuring out our place in a world that's changing so fast.
He also talks about risk-taking.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to innovation. He seems to be a big believer in, failing fast and learning from mistakes.
Yeah, he connects it to the scientific method. You experiment, you test, sometimes things don't work out. But those failures get you closer to the truth. And he thinks that same idea applies to, business, technology.
So don't be afraid to try things, even if you might mess up. It's like he's saying that embracing those failures, that's what leads to real breakthroughs.
Exactly. And he talks about how some of Google's biggest successes, like Gmail or Android, those came from that willingness to experiment and, take risks.
I wonder if that connects back to his point about finding talented people and trusting them. You have to give people the freedom to make mistakes if you want them to come up with amazing things.
Definitely a connection there. It's about creating that culture where people feel empowered to try new things, even if it means, failing sometimes.
He also mentions the importance of focus, which is interesting, especially for a company like Google. It could go in so many directions. He talks about the 70-20-10 rule for allocating resources.
Right. 70% on the core business, 20% on related things, and then 10% on totally new ideas. It's a way to stay focused and not get distracted by every shiny new thing.
That's surprising. You'd think a company like Google would want to, explore every option. But he's saying that focus is how you really achieve great things.
And that's where leadership comes in. Having a clear vision, setting priorities, and sometimes saying no to things that don't fit that vision, even if they seem like good ideas.
He also makes this point about technology not being neutral. It reflects the values and biases of the people who create it.
Right. It's easy to think of technology as objective, but it's shaped by human choices every step of the way.
So we need to think about who's building these systems, what values they're putting into them.
Absolutely. And that's why diversity and inclusion in tech is so important. The more perspectives you have, the better the technology will reflect society as a whole.
And he talks about being mindful of the unintended consequences of technology. We can't just focus on the cool new features. We have to think about, how things could go wrong.
It's about anticipating how technology might be misused and designing it in a way that, promotes well-being.
One thing that struck me was how he really grapples with the ethics of AI. He doesn't give easy answers, but you can tell he's thinking hard about the moral implications.
Right. He brings up those tough questions, bias in algorithms, the potential for harm, even what it means to be human when machines are getting so smart.
Yeah, he doesn't shy away from those challenges, does he?
He argues that we need ethical frameworks, regulations, and even just a societal conversation about the values we want in our AI. It can't just be a technical discussion. It has to be a human one.
And that goes back to his point about AI not being some force we can't control. It's something we can shape, influence.
That's right. He's calling on all of us to be active participants in this, not just passive observers.
He clearly has a lot of respect for Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the founders of Google. He describes their partnership, how their personalities work together.
He talks about Sergey coming in after a volleyball game and challenging the ideas they'd been working on, like forcing them to think differently and find better solutions. It sounds like they had a really dynamic and intellectually stimulating relationship.
It's fascinating to hear about the early days of Google. You can really sense Schmidt's admiration for their vision, their determination.
And he emphasizes how important it is to find people who are both brilliant and passionate about their work. That shared passion seems to have been a big part of their success.
And he talks about mentorship too, how he benefited from Bill Campbell, this legendary Silicon Valley coach, and how he learned about building strong teams.
It's a good reminder that even the most successful people need support and guidance, and that creating a collaborative and supportive culture is crucial for any organization.
And he talks about giving back, using your success to make a positive impact on the world.
He believes that people who have achieved success have a responsibility to help others and use their platform to make a difference.
That's a powerful message, especially coming from someone who's achieved so much in the tech world. He doesn't just talk about building cool products, he talks about using technology to make the world better.
And ethical leadership, that's key for him. It's not enough to just be successful, you have to do it in a way that aligns with your values.
He had to make some tough choices at Google. And he talks about how he relied on his own moral compass to guide him through those challenges.
It shows that leadership is about more than just profits. It's about making decisions that reflect your principles and contribute to the greater good.
And one of his core beliefs seems to be that AI isn't some distant thing. It's here now, and the decisions we make today will have lasting consequences.
Right, he's urging us to engage in this now while we still have time to shape the future of AI, to make it reflect our values and hopes.
And he's not just talking to the tech experts, he's talking to everyone. Governments, businesses, individuals, we all need to be part of this conversation.
He believes that the future of AI is too important to be left to just a few people. It's a responsibility we all share.
Which reminds me of his point about AI not being this one single thing. It's a bunch of different technologies, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. Understanding that is really important for making good decisions about how we use it.
Absolutely. He talks about distinguishing between narrow AI, which is designed for specific tasks, and general AI, which would have more human-like capabilities.
And he cautions against both getting too hyped up and being too afraid. We have to be realistic about what AI can and can't do and not get carried away by, exaggerated claims.
Critical thinking is key. We can't just blindly trust AI systems or let them make decisions for us.
We need to evaluate the information we're given, separate truth from fiction, and understand the potential biases in these systems.
He's advocating for a more informed and engaged public, basically. We all have a role to play in shaping this.
He seems to find that balance between pushing for innovation, but also recognizing the need for rules.
He sees both as essential. We need to encourage new AI technologies while also making sure they're used safely and ethically.
He compares it to other industries, like pharmaceuticals or finance. They have regulations to ensure safety and responsible behavior.
And international cooperation is important too. AI is a global issue. Finding solutions will require everyone working together.
It's complicated, but he's optimistic that we can find the right balance between fostering innovation and making sure it's responsible development.
He believes we can create a future where AI is a force for good, something that improves our lives and helps us tackle those big challenges facing the world.
But it won't happen on its own. It'll take careful planning, thoughtful discussions, and a commitment to doing what's right.
And that's where his focus on human values comes in. We need to be clear about the kind of world we want and make sure our AI reflects those values.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from the practical stuff to the philosophical questions.
We've looked at the potential, the risks, the challenges, the opportunities, and Schmidt's perspective has given us a lot to think about as we navigate this rapidly changing world.
That's a great point to wrap up part 2 of our deep dive. We've gone deep into Eric Schmidt's vision for the future of AI and explored what it means for all of us. But there's more to come. Join us in part 3, where we'll bring it all together and leave you with some final thoughts.
As we wrap up our look at, Eric Schmidt's thoughts on AI, there's this question that keeps coming back to me.
What's that?
Can we really control something as powerful as AI? Can we make sure it benefits everyone?
It's a big question, right?
We can talk about ethics and rules, but what happens when AI starts making decisions we don't understand?
It's like we're trying to map out a journey to a place we've never been, using a car we've never driven before.
Yeah, it can feel kind of overwhelming, all this talk about AI getting smarter than us.
Right, like day zero attacks.
There are definitely risks, but what struck me about Schmidt is that he thinks we have a choice. It's not about just letting technology take over. It's about actively shaping the future we want.
That's important, right? That idea that we have a say in this. Because it's easy to get caught up in the hype or the fear.
Exactly. Schmidt's not saying everything will be fine. But he's also not saying, run for the hills, the robots are coming.
He's saying we need to be smart about it.
Recognize the potential and the dangers, and make choices that align with what we believe in.
Be bold, but also humble, right? Knowing there's a lot we still don't know.
Yeah, we can't just focus on the good stuff and ignore the risks.
And we can't let fear stop us from doing anything.
One thing that stayed with me was his example of pulling the plug on an AI. If it starts doing things we don't get.
Right, and he's not talking about some sci-fi movie scenario.
He's saying we need real safeguards.
Ways to keep an eye on AI and step in if things get out of control.
That idea of human control, that's a big part of his view on AI.
Totally. He's not saying stop all AI development.
He's saying we need to guide it, make sure it benefits humanity.
And that's where human values come in.
He's really clear about that. We can't just let algorithms decide what's right and wrong.
We have to figure out what matters most to us and make sure that's built into our AI systems.
And it goes beyond just programming ethics into AI. It's about responsibility in the tech world, having open discussions about AI, making sure everyone has a voice.
This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. It's made me think about what it means to be human in a world with smart machines.
Yeah, those are questions we're all going to be facing.
There aren't easy answers, but the fact that we're asking them is a good sign.
It means we're not just letting the future happen to us.
We're trying to understand it, shape it.
And that's how we make sure the future is something we can all be proud of.
A future where technology helps us be more human, not less.
Right. And to wrap things up, I want to leave you with a thought from Eric Schmidt himself. He asks, will we be the authors of our own destiny? Or will we be written out of the story by the very technologies we create?
That's a powerful question.
It really gets at the heart of the choices we have to make.
The answer isn't just in the code we write. It's in the values we hold, the conversations we have, the future we decide to build.
And that's what we've been exploring in this deep dive.
Thanks for tuning in to our TechSphere podcast as we explore the world of AI through the eyes of Eric Schmidt. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this deep dive with your friends if you found it valuable. Thanks for listening.